Hi, Eric. Hang on, let me get my speakers working here. Let me change my name because there can't be two Eric Petersons. There's only one famous one. Let's see, rename. I can't hear you. Oh,
Can you hear me now?
there we go. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, you get the right mic on.
Awesome. Okay, cool. You're here, so I could stand down in some
Well,
capacity.
I was just going to say, hey, you want to take this one?
I mean, yeah, I have no problem. I didn't get a bio for our speaker today, so I just have, Walt only said he only has his title, which is he's the executive director of Angel Flight in Santa Monica, coordinating flights.
Yeah, and I don't have anything on him either, so I was just on the Angel Flight website trying to figure out what his story is, because I haven't given it any thought.
Okay. I mean, worst case scenario, we can always ask him to just give a brief introduction about himself.
Yeah.
How are you otherwise? How's all the fires and the chaos going on down there?
It seems to be calming down, finally.
Yeah.
You kind of take a breath. The excitement at Reed Hillview is done in terms of the fire because they were only here for a couple of days.
Yeah.
We've still got a bunch of helicopters at San Martin Airport, and I imagine we will maybe through tomorrow, or I'm sorry, through Saturday. It's hard to say for sure. I spent the day at San Martin yesterday, and one of the things I noticed was that I didn't see the huge plume of smoke that I'd seen earlier in the week when I was down there. So
Right.
maybe they're getting things under control, which would be really good.
Yeah.
Especially as we head into a hot weekend.
Somebody told me about it today and I didn't believe it. And then I was like, wow. I looked at the temperatures and
It's crazy. So how are you doing?
Doing all right. I'm not too far from you, 5 miles or so north from the airport.
Yeah.
I'm off of Montague here. So keep an eye. I definitely got some of those warnings from those fires that came up near the mountain range over here. But otherwise, staying indoors, staying quarantined.
Yeah. Enjoy the air conditioning. You have air conditioning?
Yeah. So we definitely, that's a must. Otherwise, we'd be screwed.
So how's the wedding planning going?
Not too bad. We got it for next year around August. Keep it open. And we're thinking like August 15th weekend. And so like everything that we're looking into is basically, make sure they have COVID policies just in case there's a cancellation or something like this. So
right.
Slow and steady, starting to call some people, and she's already got all her stuff in a row. I just need the tape mark X's of where to stand, and that's good enough. The rest is history. But little things like that have to do with Indian weddings. Like we got to rent a horse, so we got to find a horse. Yes, the groom rides in on a horse.
Oh, really?
Yep. So this will probably be your first Indian wedding. So it's pretty cool.
So is this going to be a 2-day affair?
Yeah, actually, the wedding itself will probably be on Sunday, but like all the events around it, it's like a week long of festivity.
So you're doing it up, the traditional way.
Yeah. So she's Punjabi, so that's like North Indian. They're Sikh, so like her dad wears a turban and stuff. And we're from Bombay area, so they're kind of like two different religions / cultures that are pretty much stemmed from the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like on Saturday is like at the Sikh temple, and so that'll be like a morning kind of early morning ceremony, and then Sunday will probably be like a winery, and it'll be like outdoors we'll kind of you might have seen it in movies where you walk around the fire. So there'll be a fire. We say our vows. The wedding part will probably take an hour. Kind of walk around, say your vows, and then it's party time. I like to say I'm a American Indian person. There's a mix, so we have to have.
Wow.
Yep. So it should be pretty fun, pretty eventful.
So what temple are you going to use?
There is a temple in her whole family's from Sacramento, so it'll probably be up the Lodi, Sacramento side or something like that. And her uncle is like one of the board members on one of the temples, so he was like, "Hey guys, everything from this year is getting pushed back next year. You better pick a weekend. These are the ones that we have kind of left." So
wow.
So I proposed on July 4th weekend, America's independence. And then I noticed they had August 15th, which is India's independence. So I was like, let's do that one. Easy to remember. I was setting myself up for the future, so I'll never forget a anniversary.
Oh, that's great.
Yep. So when I see, 10 years down the line, when I see a Facebook post, somebody saying, "Congrats to India's independence," I'll be, oh, crap.
It's my anniversary.
Exactly.
Damn. Yeah.
So slow but steady, nothing, it's a good pace. We have plenty of time.
Well, it will fly by.
Yep. So she actually just yesterday, she's finishing up her board exams for dental school, and then she's done by April. So I think the hard part, studying, is almost done, and then she'll be back. She's doing school out in Utah. But she's in Sacramento now for the next couple of weeks, and then she can breathe. We've barely hung out since the last couple of months because she's been studying so hard. I was like, dude, just do your thing, be like a horse, go straight ahead, knock it out, and then we can we got the rest of our lives to hang out. So.
Well, that's good. I'm sure that was a relief to her to know that you're not stressing about it.
Yeah, I think. I handle stress a lot better than she does.
Now, tell me how you guys met.
So we did meet on a dating app. And so how it was she was, I don't know if you know how any of these things work. I didn't take anything seriously. I was just like, okay, whatever, I'll try it. And there's an algorithm, which is like radius based. So like, you want to meet somebody 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles. I had gone up to Livermore from my parents' house, and she had flown back to her parents' house for Christmas. And that 50-mile gap just matched for the couple of weeks she was here. And then, when you message people on this, is like, hi, it's like, okay, I really was like, what's the chance of anything going anywhere? And then somewhere in our conversation, I found out that she had a Jeep. There's no pictures of it. Yes, Eric, that's our hashtag is probably going to be love at first Jeep, because that is I found out she had a Jeep. My ears perked up, and I was like, wait a minute. A girl with a Jeep? That's an Indian girl with a Jeep? Let's investigate. I invited her down to Livermore for a first date. I planned like a little scavenger hunt around town just to show her where I'm from. And she was like, whoa, this is a very well planned out date. It went really well. And then when I came back, my mom was like, how'd it go? And I was like, it went great, but she lives in Utah. And she's like, dude, you commute to San Jose. It's an hour and a half in traffic. Utah flight's an hour and 15 max. And you get an hour back on the way. I was like, damn, Mom, that's pretty, I can't argue with that. And she was just like, you're getting old, you better try it out. And I was like, okay, fine. You know how Sharon always makes fun of me. Are you married yet? So then we started kind of trying that out, and then, went on a few more dates, and we're like, hey, let's try how it is kind of long distance. So I'd go over there for 3 or 4 days, and she'd come back, visit here for a couple of days. And the flights worked out perfectly. I'd leave at like the 6:40 p.m. on Friday. Day, direct flight there. And then I'd take off from there around, 8:30 a.m. So it's 7:30 here, and I land here at about 8:45. Go straight to work, and we're no problem at all. So it started out pretty well, and then it kind of evolved from there. And then it was just like, there's a lot of little fun nuances that you'll learn along the way that were like, whoa, this is pretty crazy. It's crazy how people meet. So, yep. I
But
I told when I did propose, I did say something along the lines of like, when I found out you had a Jeep, I was like, wow, I think I like you. When I found out that you went with me to an Indianapolis Colts game in Indiana, I was like, I think I love you. And then when you started taking up fishing with me, I was like, I gotta marry you. So that is a quote from what I said when I proposed. So, yep.
that's outstanding.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. She's been hopping on a lot of these, and she's a trooper. I told her, hey, can you join on some of these Aero Club meetings? So she's been the odd name out, and kind of she's joined for about 4 of them. So
Uh-huh. Well, that's great.
yep.
And she's in Utah?
Yeah, just for the school. Yeah,
Yeah.
finishing up the school. Yep. Yep.
And in Salt Lake?
Salt Lake.
Yep.
It's a Roseman University out there.
Okay.
It's a school for like nursing and dental stuff. So,
Wow.
yep. She was working for the state, and she was just like, she was working like pesticide control or something, and she said, man, this is a little too boring, I need something more hands-on. And then so she went back to school. She's my age, so she went back to school like at 28 to just do stuff. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah, it's never stop learning, I guess.
Uh-huh. Well, it's a great story.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's Scott. We got Scott and York and Donald.
Yeah.
What we don't have is our guest of honor.
That is true. I'll keep an eye out on the emails in case he's stuck somewhere.
Okay.
There he is.
Hi, guys.
Josh. Hi.
Josh,
Thanks for having me today.
No problem.
thanks for being here.
Eric, do you have the controls to give him all the screen sharing ability, or is that going to be me?
Well, you logged in at the same account, so you should have it also.
Okay. Let's see if I can.
Let's see, one participant can share at a time. So it's set up so that all can share, and but only one person can do it at a time. So you, Josh, you have something to show us?
Yeah, I've got like a PowerPoint and a video to show.
Okay. You want to test it out quickly?
Sure.
What a program.
You bet.
That is correct.
Well, I hear video.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I hear audio.
yeah, hang on. Let me pause this and I'll get it queued up here. All right, so let's see if I can drive this. So I just hit share screen and then whatever I need to put up there.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the video. Let's try this. Is that playing okay?
I'm Chuck Thoman. This is my wife, Diana.
Yeah.
8 years
Yeah.
ago, Diana and I decided to have some children.
Okay, perfect.
And we did.
Yep.
And then I'll just try the PowerPoint real quick and make sure that works.
That worked a whole lot better than the videos we were doing last night.
Oh, good. So both those work okay?
I don't see the PowerPoint yet. Yeah, you
Okay.
might have you might have shared a window instead
I
of
see.
sharing a screen.
All right, so let me try that again. Is that better?
There we go.
That on there? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, great. Perfect. All right, I think we should be good. I'll stop it for now.
All right. Hi, Ray. Haven't seen you in a while. You're muted, so my lip reading skills aren't that great.
You'll have to hit the unmute button.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, imagine.
Whoa. Amazing what one little button will do.
How's it going?
Okay, except I got to change my name.
I don't know. I saw Leslie back there too. Isn't she just going to look over your shoulder?
Yeah, she's running the strings.
Only one that knows how to set it up.
And I just say, yes, dear. The husband's
Smart
job.
man. That's right.
Oh, gosh. Okay, next meeting we have in Discovery Bay, right?
I don't know. What are you cooking?
I'll have to ask the boss.
What do you bring?
Whatever goes well with the steak you're cooking.
Oh,
Oh, okay. He's got his order in.
I like a New York strip, medium rare.
oh, okay.
Okay.
That's what I want too. So
Oh, gosh.
Ray wants it dead.
Yeah,
Well, he doesn't get steak then.
Right. He gets a hot dog.
Hey,
Or shoe leather.
Anything beyond McDonald's? I mean, what can I tell you? Okay.
Where is everybody?
That is the $64,000 question.
Let me see. Oh, can't see. Yeah. Oh, there's some people.
Okay. Looks like we got 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, okay, but I don't see pictures. I don't see video.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, some people are just probably joined only by audio.
Yeah. Scott's going incognito right now.
Okay. I changed my name to Leslie.
Oh, there's Scott.
Yeah, Ray, you got to just page down on the bottom of that list of people. You can see the rest of them.
Oh, okay.
I did.
You can scroll
Oh,
up and
wait,
down. Well, you
on the
can't
iPad.
see me.
I can see you.
Oh, you can? Or you just see
Yeah.
me?
Well,
I can see Ray, you, the next person. I can't see the names.
Josh Olson.
AJ and John and York. I can't see that. Donald and Scott. I can see all their names. Yeah.
Good.
Oh, we having fun yet?
always. And when it's not, remind me that I said that.
What about dues? I haven't paid your dues, right?
Oops.
Let's see here.
What?
Nothing.
So let me try something. Well, I want to give them a few more minutes before we get started here.
Sounds good.
And while we're doing that, I thought I'd share a little experience that was going on out here at Reed Hillview this last week.
Ooh,
I don't know how that's showing for y'all.
I see.
Oh, with the helicopters
Yeah.
and
No,
the
no sound to speak of, because you all know what a helicopter sounds like.
Noisy.
Yes.
yeah, they were using Reed Hillview.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's why they can't close Reed Hillview.
That's right.
Well, I will tell you that that's really got the people who want to close Reed Hillview up in arms. The fact that Cal Fire was out here. Oh,
Well, that's good. Glad. Oh, wow.
Ooh, that's big stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah,
What?
we've got a few of those naysayers around the Santa Monica airport too.
Yeah, I'd say.
But when you see stuff like this, it makes you appreciate how valuable airport is for the community.
Mhm.
Right. I do that with a fire truck.
Yeah, seriously.
Got the mail came.
Wow.
And then off he goes.
Mm.
That's
It
cool.
was really impressive. They did about 30 operations on, gosh, I forget what day that was. It was the second day they were here. And when they not this guy, but what was the other, the Chinook would fly over, it would just, the whole terminal building would just reverberate with that, with the prop. It was quite exciting.
That's awesome.
Eric, are they refilling those tanks from hydrant on the airport, or?
They were, let me see here. See the red tank right here?
Yeah.
And the pallets down here. The pallets are FOSCHEC. So that's
Okay.
the fire retardant they use. You see the Doughboy pools over here, the orange things?
Yeah.
So that's, those are filled up with water out of these water
The
tenders.
water trucks. Okay.
And the water tenders would take the water out of the fire hydrant, which was about 100 yards away.
Okay.
And then this red truck, which is owned and operated by the folks who own FOSCHEC, would mix the FOSCHEC with the water in that red truck. And then you can see the lines in the ground out here that went out to those red pools, and they would fill those things up every time a helicopter came in.
Nice.
The helicopters would come in and they could take upwards of about 3,000 gallons at a time.
Wow.
And they would hover there. And I tell you, it's like 15 seconds. They're hovering and they suck up 3,000 gallons and off they go. I just marvel at the size of a pump that can suck that much water
It's amazing.
in that short period of time.
Jeez.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Let's see. Here's one more, just because. And these guys apparently charge about $20,000 an hour to CAL FIRE.
Wow.
Okay.
And this particular one is being piloted by a, I forget if he said she was 17 or 18-year-old young lady.
Wow.
A little about 5'2", blonde-headed woman that the guy from CAL FIRE said when he met her, she shows up at this meeting and he introduces himself and he's like, well, so what are you doing here? She's like, oh, I'm flying one of the Chinooks. And he said, she was just this, no attitude, none of the things that you might normally associate with somebody who does that for a living. And it's her dad that owns the company.
Well,
So she's been flying it since she was 7.
She's been flying the Black Hawk since she was 13.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
Seems like there's still a career opportunity for us then.
You can still dream, right, Walt?
Hey, Josh, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? Good to see
All
you
right.
face to face.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. I was another Zoom call for Cal pilots.
Oh, yeah.
We are practicing a session coming up Saturday in a week on the 12th with a number of speakers and whatnot, and I'm hosting one of them. So we had to do some practice runs. All right,
Well,
so seems like a private meeting today, yeah?
Yeah.
A couple more.
Yeah, I see a couple of names I recognize there.
So, Josh, you're based in San Diego or down south somewhere, right?
Yeah, in non-COVID times, we are based at Santa Monica Airport.
Oh, yeah.
Going in there on the south side of the field, there's some office buildings. So we're if you're familiar with it, under Bill's Air or Santa Monica Propeller. So we, since it was founded in '83, we've been somewhere on the field in terms of office space. So once 2028 comes around, we'll see, and negotiating with the city right now on office space now, because we've been working pretty much remotely. A few of us go into the office a couple times a week to process checks and get mail and all that. But our coordination team that arranges all the flights and most of our staff is remote. So I'm remote on a patio today. So I've got some ambient noise of my neighbors and stuff, but
There you go.
all my other kids are on Zoom and in school, and my wife is. Sometimes it's easier outside.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the situation at Santa Monica in terms of, you mentioned 28, which is what's happening in 28?
Yeah, so the deal that the city made with the FAA was once the grant assurances run out in 2028, I think Reed Hillview is the same. So after World War II, the FAA gave instrument of transfer to the city of Santa Monica saying, you know, we're giving this land back to you to operate, but you have to operate it indefinitely as an airport as part of the, you know, national transportation infrastructure.
Right.
So there's, I forget how many, but across the country, there's hundreds of these instrument of transfers after World War II happened. So they've been fighting that since, you know, well before my time. I think, you know, they first started fighting it in the 60s and 70s. And it's kind of been back and forth. And then it was kind of an 11th hour deal before Huerta left office that they settled with the city of Santa Monica, who had been suing the government for a while. And said, okay, once your grant assurances are out at the end of 2028, we'll release this property back to you and you can use it how you see fit. So that agreement is still being fought. NBAA and AOPA have some pending lawsuits, but they're kind of longer shots from my understanding of winning. I think the real chance for it to stay an airport is when the city has to announce the plans that they're going to develop the land with. Because right now they're telling everyone they're going to convert it to a big park. Which is a red herring, to say the least. You know, I think it'll probably be some sort of mixed use where it's condos, businesses, and some parks, or it's going to be, you know, sell to Amazon to be its next world headquarters or something, because it's a, you know, prime piece of real estate right on with an ocean view.
Oh, Reed Hillview is somewhat in a similar situation. It wasn't a handoff from the federal government. It was a private airport. The county eventually took over, and the grant assurances expire in 2031. So at that point in time, some people believe, oh, that's the opportunity now, so we can do whatever we like doing. Obviously, we don't like that idea. So, yeah, we are just trying to be politically active and make sure that we have the right people who make the decision, hopefully in support of the airport, as well as convincing the neighborhood that the airport has value to them. And in addition, we want to promote some coexistence, you know, that to have non-aviation businesses on the airport in order to improve the financial situation and whatnot. The biggest problem we see right now is the leaded fuel issue that some people use now as a fear tactic, fear mongering, if you will. So we have to deal with that somehow. Swift fuel is coming to mind. Electric airplanes is another possibility, of course, but that's kind of a longer term view. So my goal would be to find enough airports around the Bay Area to take on Swift fuel in order to secure the supply. Right now, this company who's producing the fuel is somewhere in the Midwest, and they only ship a truck or whatnot, and which is kind of sporadic. So if you can get bigger quantities from this company, then I might have a chance to use it at the airport to alleviate
what we're dealing with in terms of the misinformation that gets out there in terms of pollution and otherwise, and trying to make sure all the appropriate information on how the airport is being used and who uses it and the value add to the community and all that. So.
Agreed. And, you know, fear mongering is probably the appropriate word for some people We don't like lead either, to be honest, and you want to get rid of it. Now the question is, what significant impact does it have to the neighborhood, if any, besides leaded paint and pipes and all that kind of stuff, other pollution sources?
Yep.
That's not that easy to prove or to make that correlation. So it's just a red herring right now.
Yeah, same. They prop up the usual. There's a few environmental studies that have gone on, and the land around the airport does have higher pollution levels in terms of black particulate matter. But what they, then everyone draws their own conclusion. Those studies don't draw conclusions. But they forget that the Santa Monica Airport is at the intersection of the 10 and 405 freeway. So
yeah, there you go.
You realize that pollution is going to be higher there, but no one's trying to close those freeways down, interestingly enough.
All right, good point.
Yep.
All right, should we get started here?
Sure.
All right, let me quickly give a little welcome spiel, and then I'll hand it off to you, Joel. So welcome, everybody. My name is AJ Barade. I'm the treasurer of the Aero Club. Welcome to our speaker series. If this is your first time, welcome. We try to host these as often as we can. And if you're coming back, welcome back again. As many of you know, that due to the Crystal Eagle being unfortunately canceled this year because of the COVID pandemic, the event may be canceled, but our scholarship goal is not. So we still are on track for our yearly goal, which is to award 3 students with $2,000 scholarships each to help them toward their aviation career and flight training. If you've donated in the past, thank you. If you're thinking about donating for the first time, I'll go ahead and send the link in the chat below. It's a GoFundMe website. We're well more than halfway to our goal. The site may say 920 out of 6,000, but we've actually got some checks in the mail as well. So thank you very much for helping. Again, in these times, a little bit can really go a long way. If you joined us last time, we had Stephen Rubke, who was a 747 cargo pilot, who shared with us his experiences and his career path and experiences flying during this COVID pandemic. It really highlighted how cargo really is a lifeline during such times. He shared with us some interesting missions that he's flown, brought in PPE and masks here to the United States. So that was a great, interesting talk. Today, we're going to switch some gears. Our speaker today is Josh Olson, who is the executive director of Angel Flight in Santa Monica. If you have questions for Josh during his presentation, please do send them in the chat, and then we'll try to ask them once he's finished. With that, I will hand it over to Josh. One last comment, just make sure your microphones are muted so Josh has the mic for the rest of the meeting until the questions. Thank you very much. Josh, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, AJ. It's good. Aero Club has several volunteer pilots for Angel Flight West. Specifically, Gil Takamori is the one who introduced me to Walt and asked Angel Flight here to speak. So thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for all the work you guys are doing in the scholarship world and pilots that are giving back. I have drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago on how valuable general aviation can be for our communities, and I'm fortunate to see that every day through the volunteer work of the Angel Flight pilots that transport patients to and from treatment that couldn't otherwise get there because of financial considerations, geography considerations, immune compromisation situations, and you name it. And so what we are is we're a platform that matches volunteer pilots with people who need transportation to get from A and B. So I think most people are familiar with Uber now, right? They have a platform that matches contract drivers with people that need to get from point A to B. We're a platform that arranges volunteers to provide transportation for people that need to get to and from treatment. And then we do some other things too, like blood transportation. During COVID, we've been flying a lot of PPE and relief and food and some different things to heavily hit areas. So that's what we are in a nutshell. I'm a poor substitute for Gil Takamori. He is a great ambassador for Angel Flight, and I'd rather show you than tell you. So we've got a little video here I'll show you that kind of steps through what Angel Flight does and how it does it. And then I've got a few slides, but With this smaller group, I'd prefer to keep it conversational if we can. So feel free to interrupt me anytime with questions or in the chat questions or whatever we can do there. So I'm going to try to share my screen and see if this works. So one sec. Everyone see my screen right now? Thumbs up? Yep. All right, perfect. We'll hit play here and expand this.
I'm Chuck Thoman. This is my wife, Diana. 8 years ago, Diana and I decided to have some children, and we did in vitro and had Taylor and her twin brother, Kyle. And about 9 months later, our pediatrician discovered a strange reflection of light in Taylor's eyes. A few days after that, she was diagnosed with retinoblastoma in both eyes. Diana found a doctor out in California. It's probably the leading treater of this type of cancer in the world. That required us to go out there every 3 weeks for chemo and other treatments. What led us to Angel Flight was not having the financial means to fly every 3 weeks for several years. Without Angel Flight, that would have had a much greater impact on our family.
The first flight, do you remember that?
Remember it quite well. It was in Beechcraft V-tail, 4-seater. Guy flew us down to Mesquite, and then a man from near San Diego flew to Mesquite and then flew us to Burbank. Got us to where we needed to be, which resulted in her getting the best treatment possible.
Angel Flight West is a group of volunteer pilots that use airplanes like these, donated, to help people in need of often life-saving healthcare or other compelling human needs. Every day at Angel Flight West, there's over 10 flights taking off, helping those in need across the 13 western states.
Angel Flight West's dedicated and passionate staff spends every day in the office working with our generous pilots who donate the time and cost of flying their aircraft to get passengers who have medical needs from their homes, usually in remote areas, to medical facilities in large cities. Every day, those two groups work together to create miracles, sometimes life-saving miracles.
The response I usually get when I tell people about Angel Flight is, wow, pilots do all of that for free? Well, who pays for the fuel? Guess what? The pilots pay for that too. There's 5,000 rural airports scattered across the country. Many of the people living in those areas have no access to good health care. So the only way for them to get there reliably and affordably is through donated travel by our volunteer pilots and our commercial airline partners.
Most of my patients have interesting stories. Probably one of the most unique was a woman who had a very serious cancer, and in fact, she passed away. And after she passed away, we discovered that she had made a quilt with the name of every Angel Flight pilot and every person who had helped her along the way. And we have that quilt.
I can't tell you enough what these flights have meant to me, and I know they would mean to other people. There are so many people out there who are on a fixed income who, without this Angel Flight, wouldn't be able to get to these medical treatments.
When you or a loved one is sick or ill, there's so much to worry about around the actual medical condition. And when you complicate that with transportation, it becomes completely overwhelming. So our partners take that stress completely away. You're literally picked up and delivered so you can focus on getting better, on healing.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.
We're not going to forget this.
Angel Flight West arranges air transportation for people in need of health care or that have other compelling human service needs. Natural disasters.
I'm so glad to see you all.
For special needs camps for kids. And they also fly blood, tissue, and organs in support of other nonprofit healthcare charities.
A 4-year-old girl from St. George is in a fight for her life against cancer, and each time she needs treatment, it's a 5-hour drive each way. The charity Angel Flight West flew Talia and her mom to Salt Lake City and back, saving Tasha not just time and gas, but making a real difference for her daughter.
Angel Flight provided transportation for Mr. Monroe. Volunteer group.
The program's called Angel Flight.
We have a very fine relationship with Angel Flight, who has been gracious enough to fly these kids to their parents.
After a successful treatment, he was discharged this morning and put on an Angel Flight home.
Spent the last week in a Southern California hospital, and now that it's time to go home, Angel Flight is giving him a lift.
splitting the duties between two volunteer pilots. And through Angel Flight, offered to fly Matthew and his parents home for this special occasion.
Yeah.
Boy, what a program.
That is all volunteer. Incredible. These guys are angels.
Really feel somewhat like a real angel.
I feel like I'm doing a real service. If that's what an angel feels like, then I guess I feel like an angel.
Thanks to a company called Angel Flight, we have flown in your dad.
Angel Flight and Angel Pilots are wonderful. They helped us out in a time that we needed them.
We've made a major improvement in the lives of tens of thousands of people. We've gone from flying 50 missions a year to flying thousands of missions a year.
Angel Flight 5 Gulf Juliet, taxi southeast run up via Bravo.
Those people who provide their resources, their airplanes, their time, their money, their passion to help other people are making the world a better place. They're our heroes.
So every day when you look up, there's an Angel Flight pilot flying somewhere in the United States. I promise you, multiple pilots flying somewhere in the United States, taking people in social or medical need to or from treatment.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we are structured and how we work. Specifically on the volunteer side, I'll go through how the process works and how we're set up. So let me make sure this works too.
I got into aviation just as a
stop that first.
ad for an internet.
There we go. Share this. All right, thumbs up if everyone can see that too. Awesome, thanks guys. All right, so as I mentioned, we're Angel Flight West. You can see here our mission statement, delivering health and hope using donated flights to serve people with healthcare compelling needs. We do that in the air by linking the volunteer pilots and commercial airline partners. And then on the ground, we have some what we call Earth Angels that donate the ride from the airport to the treatment or to the hotel if they have to stay overnight. So we've been around a long time, since '83, as I mentioned. We've got a lot of volunteer pilots, a lot of donated costs, and all flying under Part 91, and we'll get into more of that later. But there's never any cost to the patient. And then that platform that I mentioned earlier, we fundraise for all those costs. So that's individual donations, grants, and fundraising events. And so that's how we operate. Our staff itself, we have 12 full-time employees and then a couple part-time that arranges all the flights. And the folks that we serve, you saw some of them in the video there. Primarily, our core mission are those patients traveling for non-emergency care at major research hospitals, children's hospitals, specialized treatment, that sort of thing. We do quite a few flights for kids attending special needs camps. Usually they are afflicted with some sort of major illness, and that's part of their recovery process. We do domestic violence flights. We fly veterans. We fly in disaster relief. We do a lot of flights during the mudslides. We've done some for the fires, and then helping out with other natural disasters as well. And I would include COVID relief in there, and we'll get into more of that later. We also partner with some other nonprofit blood banks to move blood in a more timely fashion that allows them to use the plasma and platelets that wouldn't be used otherwise if you're shipping it. And then we look for any kind of compelling need. So we're never out and out. No, we'll get to the qualifications for our patients here in a second. Here they are. This is medically stable and ambulatory patients. So all of this is non-emergency. We require at least 5 days notice for these flights planning. We ask for a medical release from the doctor, making sure they're okay to fly in a small non-pressurized plane. They have to have some sort of financial need or other compelling consideration. For our volunteer pilot flights, we keep them less to 1,000 miles for logistical and timing purposes. And even within that 1,000 miles, those are usually in like 300-mile legs. as a max, unless someone with a turbine or someone wants to fly farther, then we put that together. Patients have to be able to sit in and get on the airplane with minimal assistance. And so those are the types of people that you'll be flying. So it's a lot like flying a family member or friend. Just a lot of times they're, a little bit more sick and fatigued than a normal passenger. So the patients requesting the flight, they do that online or by calling us. We do vet it, like I mentioned, through a medical facility for that medical release and to verify the appointments and so forth. So we vet all of that, and then repeat passengers just request with us directly. Angel Flight is actually worldwide now. It did start in Santa Monica. A group of pilots got together and said, I'm tired of flying to Catalina Island for a buffalo burger. There's got to be something better we can do. And they went to a couple local hospitals thinking they do more like transplants and stuff. And we still do some of that, but they quickly realized the big need was this access to healthcare. And so they did a dozen flights in that first year in 1983. And then last year we did a little over 5,000 total flights. So it's really scaled. And that model was shared across the country. So, in that late 80s, early 90s, there's all these angel flights that popped up. Here's the kind of group of angel flights and how we transport and arrange flights between regions. So we work really closely with that. West, as you can see, is kind of the largest, both in geography, but size as well, and volume of flights. So how to volunteer, which is probably the most relevant topic for this group. Anyone can join. We need all kinds of volunteers. Pilots, it is honestly the best reason to fly. I hear all the time that exact statement and the statement that people feel like as a volunteer pilot, you get way more back than what you feel like you're giving, because you get to do what you love, right? You get to plan a different or unique route than potentially you're used to, and you get to see the person one-to-one that you're helping and, and many times changing their lives. So you feel good all over. I'd be selling you a ball of wax if I told you that every single flight gave you the warm and fuzzies. The one thing about healthcare, and especially a medical crisis, is different people react differently. So while I'd say 95% of the flights give you all those warm and fuzzies, 5% people are sometimes sullen, or they have a sense of entitlement or whatever. That's just people. It's not so much unique to Angel Flight, but that does happen on occasion. Joining is really easy. There's no obligation to fly. You're never expected to fly. We really do have a village. There's some pilots that fly over 100 flights a year. Most of our pilots fly 1 to 2 flights a year. So we definitely have that 80-20, and everyone's in different seasons of life. And the cool thing about Angel Flight is you get all the details ahead of time. So you know the timing, you know the weight and balance, you know where they're going, you know the patient's illness. So you can choose how you want to volunteer and when you're going to volunteer, and there's never any guilt by the staff or anything. And the same thing on the safety side. We really focus on safety and especially personal minimums. You're never going to hear us if you had to cancel a flight, 2 minutes before it took off because there's 2 knot crosswinds. You're never going to hear us second guess that. We try to develop a culture of safety, and so there's a lot of feedback from other pilots, from the pilots themselves. So there's very much a learning atmosphere and how we can be better pilots together. So that is all piece of that. The actual address is just on our website, which is www.angelflightwest.org. I said address, I'm an application. So that application you fill out, that's pretty quick, and then you become a volunteer. And then to be a volunteer pilot, there's some training that we require, which is all online. And Gil or some of the other members that I see on here can tell you a little bit more about that. It's an online program. There's an ASI course, and then it's really less about your flying skills and more about how the system works and how to sign up and how to file mission reports and what you get for your taxes at the end of the year and that kind of stuff, and a lot of the safety stuff that I mentioned. So that process, the orientation itself, they're in 10-minute blocks, and it usually takes a little over an hour to complete. And then that's also when you upload requirements, which I'll get into what we require to be a command pilot at Angel Flight. And then once you're a member, it's all online, so you'll get a couple automated emails per week. You'll get a few texts sometimes. You'll get an occasional phone call. all about trying to find the transportation resource for that particular patient. So it's pretty straightforward there. And the system itself is really great. It's online. We also have an app that does the same thing, which is pretty easy to use. And again, we welcome feedback and so forth so we can continue to improve that. In terms of to be a command pilot, a volunteer command pilot, again, you don't have to be an owner. We get that question a lot. Obviously, you guys are a club, so the club system works. The only sometimes challenge with flying clubs is reserving the plane. While we do have timing of that, sometimes that can shift if an appointment runs a little late and so forth. It's usually never more than a couple hours shift, but I know sometimes when you're reserving a plane, that can be a challenge. So that's just something to be aware of when you're reserving your plane and signing up for a flight. We do require a minimum of 250 PIC, 75 cross country, and then we waive those for ATP and commercial considerations. We do require a medical certificate, although we do accept basic med currently, and that needs to be uploaded at the end of that orientation process. We require some liability insurance. You see the minimums there. We do have some currency requirements, so BFR within the last 2 years or some other equivalents that we have listed on our site have to be 18 or older. And then we do ask for an affirmation that you're current on all those before every flight and annually. We have folks sign that. The patients too, by the way, they all sign waivers when they sign up for a mission, and the pilot has the option to have them sign plane side too, and you can do that virtually. That's all, you can do it on your iPad or phone. And so that protects liability for those that are concerned about those requirements. I mentioned earlier the reasons to fly. I mean, obviously, pilots don't need many excuses to fly. This is the best excuse. For those of you who have spouses that aren't always thrilled when you're flying, this is one that I've never heard of a spouse objecting to, because you get to help someone else. It's a great way to stay current. There are some fuel discounts available for Angel Flight pilots, and you do get priority handling with our call sign and so forth. You know, you get new routes to plan. The flights themselves, because it's Part 91, even if we had a bucket full of money, we couldn't reimburse pilots for it. However, IRS has allowed tax exemption for these flights. So, and that's really factored by the cost of the flight itself that can become tax deductible. So it's a little bit less than just flying for fun because you do get some tax breaks there. And it's really just, you get to meet some awesome people. It's a really great group of pilots and community. And it's easy. And like I said, you can do it on your own time and your own schedule. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Safety is a big emphasis for us. You can cancel for any reason. We work with the passengers ahead of time to arrange backup plans. We do have some funds that help when we get weathered out or a pilot has to cancel, that we can book some alternate transportation and so forth. Go or no go is always at pilot's discretion. And we do have a safety officer and some safety, local safety folks that you can bounce questions off of, and that will follow up on some of those safety reports and so forth. Again, more as an education and learning tool for our other volunteer pilots. These are some other ways to volunteer. You know, if you're not in a place where you can fly right now, but you'd still love to help, we can use it. We're a really volunteer-driven organization. We do have staff to remain the consistency and sustainability of the organization, but we rely heavily on mobilizing volunteers. So that's really kind of the bullet point list of how to get involved and so forth. I'd much rather, like I said, start a conversation, ask some questions. And I know I've seen some volunteer members on here. So if anyone has technical questions and so forth, feel free to let me know. I will show you real quick just what that website looks like when you're signing up for flights. So, and I'll get into some of how we're handling COVID here too in a second. So here's the missions available list. Let me search by Northern California so this is relevant for you guys. So here you see we've got 29 flights on the list for Northern California. This one, earliest one is Wednesday. You can see this is someone coming from Flagstaff, Arizona that goes to Stanford. We've cut it into 2 legs. So we're seeing if someone from Flagstaff, which you can see here is filled. So we found an Arizona or Southern California pilot most likely to fly from Flagstaff to Apple Valley. And then looking for that second leg, Apple Valley to Palo Alto. By the way, anytime we arrange these handoffs, the handoff point's always negotiable. So if you've got a great fuel deal at Lake Havasu or some other place, you just call the office or call the other pilot and work out that handoff point to whatever works best for you. I will say a lot of our flights in the Bay Area are going into Palo Alto for Stanford, obviously, and all the neighboring and Lucille Packard Children's and so forth. Some people aren't comfortable flying into Palo Alto because of the short field. So we also do San Jose, which is close by, and we can arrange ground transportation from there. Oakland is the second biggest destination, and that is to actually UCSF. Oakland seems to be a little bit easier. San Francisco actually does waive fees if people like flying in and out of SFO, and then we have some people that like to go to some of the other airports there. As long as we know ahead of time, we work out. But that's typically where you're going to see the routes, and you see a lot of stuff from Central Valley, Central Coast. You see a lot of stuff from Arcata, Eureka, Crescent City, Redding, Weed, those kind of central Northern California, Southern Oregon, and even from Reno that go over the mountains there. So that's kind of the typical route tree in Northern California because of, again, the centers of excellence for healthcare there. I'll get into COVID here in a little bit, but I just want to pause here and see if there's any questions or comments from anyone over what we've covered so far.
Josh, I got a question. This is AJ. On that last screen, if you have a flight that is segmented into 3 different legs, and 2 of them are kind of filled up, we have volunteers. What if we can't get that last leg? Does the patient or the passenger, do they get notified that this has to be canceled, or how do you kind of work around that?
Yeah, so when we're arranging flights, we typically, unless the patient has told us otherwise, like their backup plan, they have to drive 2 days in advance or something, we typically work up until the day before the flight. And if we haven't found volunteers to cover all of that, then at that point we cancel the flight and notify the pilots that are on those other 2 legs. We would contact, in that specific case, we would contact those other pilots first and see if one of them wanted to stretch a leg. But if no one was able to do that, then yes, we would cancel it. And then the patient typically either reschedules the appointment, uses a backup plan, or we find some other alternate form of transportation for them. We do have a great relationship with Alaska Airlines. They donate about $500,000 of tickets per year, and then they give us guidelines on how to administer those. So 70% of that are for Alaska patients traveling within Alaska or the lower 48, but oftentimes we can use those as backup for weather or whatever in the lower 48. We also have some other, there's a commuter airline, I think it's called Compass, the name is escaping me right now, that runs one of those essential service routes from Crescent City to the Bay Area. So sometimes we'll back those specific flights up on there. So it varies each time, but we're never gonna leave you, the volunteer, in the lurch, like having to cancel on the patient themselves or whatever. We handle all that. And same thing, like, if the day before or the morning of you wake up real sick, you contact us, and then we try to find all the other resources or see if other pilots can hand off. I will say the same thing if there's a 3-leg relay, and a lot of our turbine volunteer pilots like the longer flights because it's a more efficient fuel burn for them. They like to sign up for the longer legs. So we try to do whatever's easiest for the patient, but also we try to be equitable in the volunteer opportunities for all of our pilots too.
Awesome, thanks. That seems like you've thought of every contingency plan there. Awesome.
Well, unfortunately, they come up all the time, so we have to deal with them, and everything's a little unique in terms of the situations and resources. So I always say the coordination, bullpen, and angel flight is much less a science and more of an art. There's a lot of moving pieces.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Have you ever put together statistics to show how many flights go into
Eric, I think
Eric,
your
you're a little light on
headphone- you
volume.
gotta put your headphones on.
Yeah.
Forget. How about now?
There we go. Much better.
Okay. I was just kind of curious if you've ever put together a map or statistics or something like that to show the number of flights in and out of the different airports across the country.
Yeah, we do have some of those heat maps.
Uh-huh.
Actually, FlightAware put one for us together recently. I don't have it on me, but I could share that later if you're interested. Yeah, those routes that I mentioned are the kind of glowing red heat maps. We also actually on our on that same website that I showed you here. Let me just screen share again real quick. What did I do? Here we go. So we have a visual version of this map that kind of shows that a little bit too. See, let me just show you like, actually I can just show you. I'll show you Oakland here just for a case test. So you can, this is just coming up in the next couple of days, but you can also sort this by dates, but you can see Medford, you know, this one's coming from Visalia. We get a lot of this Reno, Redding, Arcadia, Eureka, sometimes over here from Eastern Oregon. And then there's a fair amount actually between the Bay Area and LA corridor, even though both those cities have great resources, specialties, you know, in some areas are better than others. So that's actually a fairly frequent route too. And we'll typically actually break that up in like Visalia area just to make it a shorter day for both pilots. But sometimes pilots like to fly both ways. I will also say another common question that comes up is, am I on the hook for the round trip? And no, we plan everything as one way. Some pilots like to do, you know, let's say there's a Bay Area to Santa Monica, fly down, the patient goes to UCLA, they sit at our office, you know, during non-COVID times, and then wait for the patient to come back and then, you know, work from there and then fly home. But everything is one way. And typically, because most of our volunteers are based in an urban area and most of our pilots and our patients are in a rural area, you're flying empty one way at least. So if you were flying up to Medford in this case to get the patient, you'd fly up empty and fly them back. We try to find the opportunities to get it both ways, but just because of patient schedules and volume, it doesn't always work. But yeah, you're typically flying one way empty. And then you're not obligated to stick around or anything. You drop the passenger off and then you're on your way. I'll actually go back to that screen just real quick to kind of update you on our COVID procedures. So we are fortunate, and you can see some of the COVID guidelines in here at the top of this missions available. We are fortunate to have on our, as one of our volunteer pilots, a virologist and infectious disease expert that is at the University of Washington. And so he's been helping us navigate this along the way. Our safety officer, who's a guy named Rich Pickett, who flies Part 135 and is also an instructor, he got COVID on a first-class flight from ferrying a plane across country. And he is one of the few that were hospitalized, intubated, medically induced coma, the whole bit. And then 14 days later was okay and COVID-free and has healed and is back to flying like crazy. So he's been on our task force, as has Hunter Hansfield, this doctor that I mentioned. And so they've been advising us really closely. There's another guy, some of you might be involved in CalDART, Dr. Macy's. He and Hunter collaborated on some white papers to talk about the specific risks of COVID inside a cockpit. And, you know, the bottom line, just like, you know, every part of our society with COVID, is there's no way to minimize that risk to zero, especially in a cockpit where you can't get social distancing and cleaning and so forth, but you can mitigate the risk significantly. So we've just been really upfront about what those are and how to do it. And we do require masking in the cockpit currently. And we eliminate any kind of human contact between the patient and the pilot. And we encourage patients to travel alone whenever try to maximize the distance in the cockpit and maximize circulation of air. And so that's how that's happened. We currently have about 40% of our volunteers that have just elected not to be able to do that during this time, because they have, they're at high risk, or they're dealing with people who have comorbidity or whatever. And about 60% do. And then the same thing on the patient side. We're only flying about 60% of the requests we normally do. And that's because the healthcare community has delayed and deferred a lot of treatment to free up ICU space. And also a lot of patients do not want to fly during this time or travel to treatment because of the risk. A lot of them are immune compromised. So that's kind of how we've been navigating through this. I mean, in terms of all the local ordinances, we've been deemed an essential service everywhere. So, even at the most strict lockdown times, we were able to continue to operate. And then the other thing that we've done is really try to pivot for those volunteers that choose not to fly passengers this time. We've partnered with a lot of other nonprofits that are securing and providing PPE, providing relief support, et cetera, and non-human transport, so cargo transport, to get materials and supplies to the people that are most affected. And we've done some of that too with the healthcare community, with our commercial airline partners flying social workers and nurses and stuff to the front line. So that's kind of how we've been handling the COVID situation. And it's something that we monitor on a daily and weekly basis with our healthcare partners and with that task force that I mentioned earlier that include our safety officer and an infectious disease expert. Are there any other questions, concerns, stories you want to share for those of you who are volunteer pilots with Angel Flight?
Well, the question, or not the question, but when Ivan Takamura made a presentation at my FBO, I think what was striking for me most is that some pilots have to deal with the emotional connection to the pilot. And that was one of the most striking comments he made to me, that you kind of get the connection with the patient, and they might be able to get in the way into your decision making.
Yeah,
How do you
and
address that?
that is a good consideration. And actually the ASI course that I mentioned that we partnered with AOPA ASI to create talks a lot about that, the mission mindset, if you will. When you've got someone there that really needs to get to treatment, it's a compelling case, often it's a sick kid or whatever. It makes the checklist and the FRAT, the go, no go decision even more critical. So that's something we emphasize at every turn, but you'd not be human not to be impacted by that. So it's something good to keep in mind. I will say, I mean, you saw the story there about Taylor. Our passengers are compelling. I mean, they've got amazing stories. They're dealing with incredibly hard circumstances. So it's hard not to feel emotionally connected to that when you share, 2 or 3 hours in a cockpit with them. And I will say too, most of the flights when you're taking a passenger to treatment, they can sometimes be chatty because they're nervous. Typically the flights home, they sleep the whole way because they're exhausted from chemo or whatever else. So that's also just another consideration. A lot of people are worried, like, what's going to be in the back of my airplane? Is someone going to be throwing up? Like, am I going to have IVs hanging from inside my plane? And that stuff, it really is like flying with someone who might be a friend or a family member or something, that they're going to have questions. Some folks have never flown before. Some are very unfamiliar with small airplanes. So the typical stuff that you get in terms of questions in there. And then, some people really like to talk about their illness and talk through the treatment and everything that's going on, because that's part of their healing process. And other people, are just really private or shy about it and keep to themselves. So it's a little bit different each way. But Walt, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a really critical decision-making factor to make sure that, you're as impartial as possible with your own personal, flight risk analysis and your no-go procedure. I will say most pilots too also find it helpful because they find compelled to do a lot more flight planning for Angel flights because they don't want to, let a passenger down. And so that level of detailed care is important too.
Yeah, so the next question that comes to my mind is the safety record of your operations. Can you comment on that? Or?
Yeah, I can. So we've now had over 85,000 total flights at Angel Flight since our history. We have never had a fatal accident of a passenger on board. Last year was the first fatal accident, or not last year, 2018. You guys probably saw the accident we had at Palo Alto from the pilot that was flying in from Reading in a Mooney. He landed a little fast and then on go around stalled the airplane and crashed into the duck pond. He didn't survive the crash. Both the passenger and her daughter did survive the crash. So that was the only fatal accident with of a pilot with a passenger on board. We've had a couple other fatal accidents of pilots taking off going to pick someone up. One happened actually off the end of Santa Monica with a game show host, Peter Tamarkin of Press Your Luck. He had a rod blow out through his engine, and he tried to land it kind of in the ocean on the beach, but didn't have a shoulder harness on, which is what they ended up deeming the fatal accident there. And then we had another one in Arizona, which the NTSB said they thought was, it was pilot error. They think that he may have actually fell asleep in the airplane. And then there were two fatal accidents in 2018. There was another one from Reading that they dropped off a passenger in Reading and then were flying home. It was during the Smoky fires, if you remember, in 2018. It was just at dusk. And again, the NTSB said that was loss of control, pilot error. Looked like when he was maybe climbing out, he got spatially disoriented, even though he was on IFR flight plan and flying IFR. So there have been a handful, but we're still outperforming in terms of 85,000 flights with 4 or 5 fatal accidents. We're outperforming GA, and I think that's a credit, one, to our volunteers and that they take this seriously. Two, that we're focusing on safety and we're making that an emphasis. And then 3, what I mentioned earlier, I think people do take greater care in flight planning and flying when they're doing these Angel flights.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? We got time for, I think, one more. Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead and say thank you very much, Josh. That was first time I really got an in-depth understanding of the organization and what it does, and it really is amazing. The power of volunteerism is just great. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. I think everybody here probably learned something new. Maybe you got yourself a few new volunteers. So if you have a website that maybe you can put into the chat there for folks to learn a little bit more or maybe volunteer, that'd be great. And with that, speaking of volunteering, again, I do want to make one more plug for the Aero Club for our scholarship donations. I put a link into the comment section, so if you got a moment, at least check it out. There's a handsome picture of Eric on there, so at least click on it for that reason. But thank you again, and Josh has just put in an Angel Flight link as well. So
yeah, and I will say just real quick too, we're not, even though we've got limited staff, we always pick up the phone or get back to people right away. So if you ever have a question, just feel free to email us or call us anytime. And we're there to help. And you guys are the real angels in the Angel Flight equation. So would welcome anyone to volunteer. And thanks for considering it. And thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Again, thank you very much for your time. And we'll be sending out another email for our next speaker that we'll have. So thank you, everybody else. Eric, Walt, you have any closing comments or any last words?
No, just thank you once again to Josh for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Cass.
Great to have you. Thank you, Josh.
Have a nice evening, everybody.